In the summer of 1946, Los Angeles felt like a living promise. The streets were full of noise and motion, with streetcars rattling past palm-lined avenues and neon signs glowing late into the night. The war was over, and people believed a brighter future had finally arrived. For thousands of young dreamers, Hollywood was the center of that future. Among them was a young woman named Elena Hart, who arrived in the city with one suitcase, a hopeful heart, and a carefully built dream of becoming someone unforgettable. Elena was 22 years old, slim, graceful, and striking in a way that made people turn their heads. She dyed her hair deep black and wore it in soft waves that framed her pale face. Her makeup was bold for the time, dark lipstick and sharp eyeliner that gave her an almost mysterious look. She knew exactly how she wanted to be seen. She wanted to stand out, to look like someone who belonged on a movie screen. People often stared at her, unsure whether she was beautiful or haunting, but unable to look away. She rented small rooms in cheap boarding houses, moving often when money ran out. Sometimes she stayed with acquaintances she met at cafes or bus stops. Elena was good at meeting people. She listened carefully, smiled politely, and learned how to tell just enough of her story to keep others interested. She said she was an actress, and it wasn't entirely a lie. She attended auditions whenever she could, even if they were little more than crowded rooms where dozens of girls waited for hours only to be dismissed in minutes. Most of the time, she left without a callback. Still, she refused to admit defeat. At night, she practiced lines alone, whispering them to cracked mirrors in dimly lit rooms. She imagined cameras pointed at her, imagined applause, imagined her name printed in bold letters. That dream kept her going even when her stomach was empty and her feet ached from walking across the city. People who knew Elena described her as gentle but distant. She could be warm one moment and unreachable the next. There was always something she held back. She rarely spoke about her family or her past, and when asked, she would laugh it off or change the subject. Yet there was a sadness behind her eyes that suggested she had learned early in life how easily hope could be taken away. Around Hollywood, rumors followed her like a shadow. Some said she knew powerful men. Others claimed she attended secret parties in the hills. Elena never confirmed any of it, but she also never denied it. The mystery made her more interesting. It also made her vulnerable. Friends noticed that Elena's behavior began to change as the months passed. She started missing appointments and disappearing without explanation. Sometimes she would vanish for days and return looking tired and anxious, as if she hadn't slept. When asked where she had been, she would simply say she had business to take care of. Her voice would tighten when she said it, and she would avoid eye contact. One evening, she met her friend Clara at a small diner near Hollywood Boulevard. The place smelled of coffee and grease, and the jukebox hummed softly in the corner. Elena arrived late, wearing a black dress despite the warm air. She looked around nervously before sitting down, as if she expected someone to be watching her. Clara noticed Elena's hands trembling as she lifted her coffee cup. This was unusual. Elena was usually calm, even when things went wrong. Clara asked if she was feeling sick, but Elena shook her head. After a long pause, she leaned forward and lowered her voice. She said someone knew things about her. Things she had never told anyone. She didn't explain what those things were, only that they could ruin her if they came out. Clara tried to laugh it off, suggesting Elena was being paranoid. But Elena didn't smile. Her eyes were serious, filled with fear. Before Clara could press her for more details, Elena straightened up and forced a smile. She said she was just tired and changed the subject, talking about an audition she had the next morning. But the fear didn't leave her face. It stayed there, hidden just beneath the surface. As Elena left the diner that night, she glanced over her shoulder more than once. The street was busy, full of strangers, but she walked quickly, as if she wanted to disappear into the crowd. Clara watched her go, uneasy, sensing that something was very wrong. In the weeks that followed, Elena seemed more isolated than ever. She stopped answering letters and avoided places where people might recognize her. She spent long hours walking alone through the city, often ending up near empty lots or quiet neighborhoods far from Hollywood's bright lights. It was as if she was searching for something or trying to escape something she could not name. Despite her fear, Elena refused to leave Los Angeles. She could have gone back home or tried her luck in another city, But she stayed. The dream of fame still burned inside her, stubborn and unyielding. She believed that if she just held on a little longer, everything would change. That belief kept her rooted in a city that was slowly closing in on her. On the last night anyone saw her alive, Elena checked into a small hotel under a false name. The clerk later said she seemed distracted, glancing repeatedly toward the door. She asked if anyone had inquired about her and seemed relieved when the clerk said no. Still, she barely slept that night. Somewhere between her dreams and her fears, Elena wrote in her notebook. She filled its pages with names and dates, fragments of thoughts, and warnings written in hurried handwriting. It was as if she was trying to make sense of a danger she could feel but not fully understand. By morning, Elena Hart was gone. No one reported her missing right away. In a city filled with people chasing dreams, it wasn't unusual for someone to disappear. But within days, whispers began to spread. Friends realized they hadn't heard from her. Landlords noticed her belongings left behind. And somewhere in the quiet spaces of Los Angeles, a terrible truth was already waiting to be discovered. Elena had come to Hollywood believing it would give her everything she ever wanted. She had no way of knowing that the city of dreams would become the place where a story ended, and where a legend would begin. The morning air was cold and heavy, the kind that made every sound feel sharper. A woman walking her dog along a quiet stretch of land on the outskirts of Los Angeles noticed something strange lying ahead. From a distance, it looked artificial, pale against the dark soil, almost like a discarded store mannequin. The woman slowed her steps, her unease growing with each second. When she moved closer, her breath caught in her throat. What she was seeing was not plastic or fabric. It was human. She screamed, dropping the leash as her dog barked wildly. Within minutes, police cars arrived, their sirens cutting through the silence. Officers cordoned off the area, trying to keep curious onlookers back. Even the most experienced among them felt a chill run through their bodies. The scene before them was unlike anything they had encountered before. The body belonged to a young woman. She was positioned carefully, almost deliberately, as if whoever left her there wanted her to be found exactly that way. The ground around her was strangely clean. There were no signs of a struggle, no footprints, no evidence of violence at the scene itself. It was as though the crime had happened somewhere else, far away, and the body had been placed here afterward with cold precision. When detectives examined the victim more closely, they realized the level of planning involved was disturbing. This was not a crime of rage or panic. It was controlled, calculated, and deeply unsettling. The officers exchanged quiet looks, each one aware that they were standing at the beginning of a case that would haunt the city. The woman had no identification on her. Her fingerprints were taken immediately and rushed through police records. Meanwhile, reporters began gathering at the edge of the crime scene, sensing a story that would grip the public. By the time the body was transported to the morgue, whispers were already spreading. Something terrible had happened, and people wanted answers. Later that afternoon, the victim's identity was confirmed. She was Elena Hart. When the news reached the press, it exploded across Los Angeles. Headlines screamed her name in bold letters, paired with a nickname that would soon become legendary: the Black Dahlia Murder. No one could say exactly who coined the name, but it stuck instantly. It was dramatic, dark, and unforgettable, just like the image of the young woman whose life had been brutally ended. As details leaked to the public, curiosity turned into obsession. Radio programs interrupted regular broadcasts. Newspapers printed extra editions. People crowded around street vendors, eager to read every horrifying detail. Some felt sympathy. Others felt a morbid fascination they could not explain. Elena had become famous in death in a way she had never managed in life. Detectives worked through the night, trying to piece together her final days. They searched her rented room, expecting to find chaos or signs of struggle. Instead, they found something even more unsettling. The room was neat, almost too neat. Clothes were folded. Shoes were lined up carefully. It was as if Elena had not expected to return. On the small table near her bed, they found a notebook. Its cover was worn, its pages filled with handwriting that shifted between careful and frantic. Names were written and crossed out. Dates appeared without explanation. Some lines were underlined heavily, as if they carried great importance. The notebook felt less like a diary and more like a warning. As detectives flipped through the pages, they realized this was the closest thing Elena had left behind to tell her story. She had been documenting something, or someone, and whatever it was had terrified her enough to write it down. While police examined the notebook, more information about Elena's life began to surface. Men came forward claiming to have known her. Some said they had dated her. Others claimed she had confided in them. Many of these stories contradicted each other, and detectives quickly realized that not everyone was telling the truth. Fame, even in death, attracted liars. Still, a pattern began to emerge. Elena had been seen in the company of influential people. She had attended gatherings where ordinary young women were rarely invited. She had moved through circles far above her social standing, and not everyone was comfortable with that fact becoming public. As police worked behind closed doors, the media created its own version of events. Elena was portrayed as mysterious, dangerous, and reckless. Some articles hinted that she had invited trouble. Others painted her as an innocent dreamer destroyed by a cruel city. The truth lay somewhere in between, but it was already being buried under speculation. Then something happened that changed the investigation entirely. 3 days after the body was found, the Los Angeles Police Department received a package. It was addressed to the chief of police and delivered with no return address. Officers opened it carefully, expecting a threat. Inside, they found items that made their blood run cold. Personal belongings that had once belonged to Elena. Things that had never been recovered from her room. Included was a short typed note. It was calm, almost playful. The writer thanked the police for their efforts and suggested they were wasting their time. The message ended with a promise that more information would come soon. The realization hit hard. The killer was watching. And Weiss, the killer, wanted attention. Detectives now faced a terrifying truth. This was not just a murder. It was a performance. The person responsible wanted to control the story, to manipulate both the police and the public. Every move felt deliberate, every detail carefully chosen. The pressure on the investigation increased dramatically. City officials demanded progress. The public demanded justice. The media demanded answers that the police did not yet have. Every lead had to be followed, no matter how small. As days passed, more letters arrived. Each one contained details only the killer could know. Each one seemed designed to humiliate the police, pointing out their failures and mistakes. Yet within the cruel messages were hints, subtle clues buried beneath arrogance. One letter mentioned a meeting Elena had attended shortly before her death. Another referred to a private argument that had taken place behind closed doors. The killer was not guessing. They had been close to her. Very close. As detectives reread the notebook found in Elena's room, one name began to stand out. It appeared more frequently than the others. Sometimes underlined. Sometimes written in darker ink, as if pressed harder into the page. The name belonged to a man known throughout Los Angeles for his success and respectability. The possibility was shocking. If the notebook was telling the truth, the killer was not a stranger lurking in the shadows. They were someone who walked freely in society, trusted and admired. By the end of the week, the city was gripped by fear and fascination. People locked their doors earlier. Women watched over their shoulders. Conversations in cafes and streetcars always returned to the same subject. Who killed the Black Dahlia, and why? The answer was closer than anyone realized, hiding behind charm, influence, and secrets too dangerous to expose. And as the investigation pushed forward, one thing became painfully clear. This case was not going to end quietly. It was only just beginning. The name appeared again and again in Elena Hart's notebook, written with a firmness that suggested fear mixed with certainty. Victor Lane. Each time detectives saw it, the weight of the investigation seemed to grow heavier. Victor Lane was not an ordinary man. He was respected, admired, and protected by his reputation. In Los Angeles, his name opened doors that most people never even saw. Victor was a successful surgeon with a private practice in a wealthy neighborhood. He donated generously to charities, attended elegant parties, and appeared in society columns alongside movie stars and politicians. To the public, he was the image of trust and stability. The idea that such a man could be connected to a brutal murder felt impossible. Yet the notebook did not lie. Elena had written his name too many times for it to be a coincidence. When detectives requested an interview, Victor agreed without hesitation. He arrived at the police station in a tailored suit, his posture calm and his expression polite. He shook hands, made eye contact, and answered questions in a steady voice. If he was nervous, he hid it well. Victor admitted he knew Elena. He said they had met through mutual acquaintances, and that he had occasionally helped her with money when she struggled. He claimed he felt sympathy for her, describing her as a lost soul chasing unrealistic dreams. According to him, their relationship was entirely innocent. But as the interview continued, small cracks began to show. Victor avoided certain questions. He spoke carefully, choosing his words as if each one mattered deeply. When detectives asked about the notebook, his eyes flickered briefly, a moment so quick it could have been missed. But the detectives noticed. They pressed further, asking where Victor had been on the night Elena disappeared. He provided an alibi, explaining he had been attending a private gathering at his home. Several guests could confirm it. The story sounded solid, almost too solid. After the interview, detectives felt conflicted. There was no direct evidence tying Victor to the murder. Yet something about him felt rehearsed, controlled in a way that made them uneasy. He had the confidence of someone used to being believed. As the investigation deepened, reporters caught wind of Victor's connection to Elena. His name appeared in small articles at first, buried beneath speculation and rumors. But once the public noticed, the pressure increased. Victor's colleagues defended him fiercely, calling the accusations absurd. His patients expressed shock. Many refused to believe a man like him could be involved in such a crime. Then another letter arrived at the police station. This one was different. It was shorter, sharper, and far more personal. The writer referred to Elena by a nickname that had never been published. Inside the envelope was a photograph. Elena was alive in the photo. She stood in a dimly lit room, her expression tense, her eyes fixed on the camera. The date on the back showed it had been taken just days before her death. Written beneath it were the words, "She trusted the wrong person." The photo sent shockwaves through the department. Only someone who had been close to Elena could have taken it. Someone she trusted enough to allow near her in a private space. Detectives traced the typewriter used for the letter. It was an old model, not uncommon, but its mechanical flaws narrowed the possibilities. After days of searching, the trail led back to a medical office. Victor Lane's office. When police returned to question him again, Victor was gone. His home was empty. His office locked. His car missing. Neighbors said they hadn't seen him in days. It appeared as if he had vanished into thin air. The media reacted instantly. Headlines screamed that the prime suspect had fled. Radio hosts spoke his name with certainty, calling him a monster hiding behind wealth and charm. To the public, the case seemed solved. But inside the police department, doubts lingered. Some detectives believed Victor was guilty and running from justice. Others questioned why a man with so much to lose would draw attention to himself by sending letters and photographs. It felt reckless, almost theatrical. Victor had always been careful, calculated. The letters felt different. As the search for Victor expanded nationwide, detectives revisited everything they thought they knew. They re-examined Elena's notebook, looking for patterns they might have missed. This time, they noticed something subtle. The handwriting around Victor's name sometimes changed slightly, as if Elena had written it at different times, under different emotions. And then there was another name. It appeared less often, written smaller, almost hidden between lines. Margaret Lane. Margaret was Victor's wife. Elegant, intelligent, and known for her quiet grace, she rarely appeared in the public eye. While Victor enjoyed attention, Margaret preferred the background. She hosted dinners, supported charities, and was widely admired for her composure. When detectives interviewed Margaret, she seemed genuinely shocked by her husband's disappearance. She spoke softly, her eyes filled with tears. She insisted she had never met Elena and knew nothing about her husband's involvement with the young woman. But something didn't add up. Hotel records revealed that a woman using a false name had checked into a small hotel near where Elena was last seen. The description matched Margaret. Surveillance footage showed a woman resembling her entering the building, her face partially hidden beneath a hat. When confronted with this evidence, Margaret's calm demeanor faltered. She claimed she had been visiting a friend, but could not provide details. Her answers became vague, inconsistent. Meanwhile, the search for Victor took a darker turn. Acting on a tip, police returned to the Lane residence with a warrant. What they found changed everything. In the basement, hidden behind a locked door, they discovered Victor's body. The shock was overwhelming. The man believed to be a fugitive had been dead all along. Evidence suggested he had been killed days before Elena. The truth began to emerge slowly, painfully. Victor had been involved with Elena, promising help and protection he could never truly give. When Margaret discovered the affair, her carefully controlled world collapsed. She confronted Victor, and in a moment of rage and desperation, she killed him. But the story did not end there. Margaret realized that Elena knew too much. Elena had become a threat, a living reminder of betrayal. Margaret's grief turned into cold determination. She lured Elena into a trap, staging the murder to look like the work of a sadistic stranger. She sent the letters, the photographs, manipulating the police and public alike, guiding suspicion toward a man who could no longer defend himself. Victor's disappearance was not an escape. It was a carefully crafted illusion. As detectives pieced together the timeline, the full horror of Margaret's actions became clear. She had orchestrated everything with precision, using intelligence and patience instead of brute force. The realization shook the department. The killer had been hiding in plain sight, protected by elegance and silence. The Black Dahlia case was no longer just about a murdered young woman. It was about betrayal, obsession, and how far someone would go to protect a carefully built life. And as Margaret Lane sat quietly during her final interrogation, one truth hung heavy in the air. The most dangerous monsters were not always the ones who looked terrifying. Sometimes, they wore calm smiles and spoke in gentle voices, leaving devastation in their wake. Once Victor Lane's body was discovered in the basement of his own home, the entire direction of the investigation shifted. What had once seemed like a simple story of a powerful man fleeing justice now unraveled into something far more disturbing. The police station buzzed with tension as detectives worked through the night, re-examining every detail they thought they understood. Nothing could be taken at face value anymore. Victor's death changed the meaning of everything. The letters sent to the police, the photograph of Elena taken shortly before her murder, and Victor's sudden disappearance no longer pointed to a man on the run. They pointed to someone else entirely, someone who had been present the whole time, quietly shaping the story from behind the scenes. Margaret Lane was brought in again for questioning. This time, the tone was different. Gone was the polite sympathy extended to a worried wife. Now she was a central figure in a double homicide investigation. Still, Margaret arrived composed, dressed neatly in dark clothing, her hair perfectly arranged. She looked like a woman attending a formal appointment, not someone whose life was unraveling. She expressed shock when informed that Victor was dead. She pressed a hand to her mouth, her eyes filling with tears. For a moment, even the detectives wondered if they had been wrong. Her reaction seemed real, raw, and painful. But as the interview continued, cracks began to appear. Margaret spoke of Victor as a loving husband, a man devoted to his work and their quiet life together. She claimed there had been no problems in their marriage, no signs of infidelity. Yet when detectives asked about Elena Hart again, Margaret's answers were careful, rehearsed. She repeated that she had never met her, never heard of her before the murder. The detectives did not argue. Instead, they listened. They presented hotel records showing a woman using a false name checking into a hotel near where Elena was last seen alive. The dates matched perfectly. Margaret's expression tightened, just slightly. She explained that she often traveled alone to clear her head, that Victor respected her privacy. But when asked why she used a fake name, her explanation faltered. She said she valued discretion. The room fell silent. Next, they showed her the surveillance footage. Grainy and imperfect, but clear enough to suggest the women entering the hotel bore a strong resemblance to her. Margaret looked away, blinking rapidly. She said it could be anyone. Los Angeles was full of women who looked alike. The detectives pressed further, calmly but relentlessly. They asked about the letters sent to the police. Margaret said she knew nothing about them. They asked about the photograph. She denied ever owning a camera like that. Each denial came smoothly, but the effort behind them was visible now. Her composure was slipping. As the interrogation continued, another team of investigators was working quietly elsewhere. They examined Margaret's personal belongings, searching for anything that connected her to Elena. In a locked drawer in her bedroom, they found a typewriter. The model matched the one used to write the letters. More importantly, its mechanical flaws were identical. When confronted with this evidence, Margaret's mask finally cracked. She sat silently for a long moment, staring at the table in front of her. The room felt heavy, suffocating. When she finally spoke, her voice was no longer calm. It was strained, brittle, like glass about to shatter. She admitted she had discovered Victor's affair months earlier. At first, she refused to believe it. Victor was careful, charming, convincing. But small signs began to pile up. Late nights, strange phone calls, the way he guarded his private papers. Margaret, intelligent and observant, followed the trail quietly. When she learned about Elena, something inside her broke. Margaret described Elena not as a person, but as a threat. A young woman who represented everything she feared losing. Her marriage, her reputation, her carefully constructed world. She admitted confronting Victor in their basement, demanding the truth. The argument turned violent. She claimed it was an accident, that she never intended to kill him. But the evidence told a different story. The injury suggested control, not panic. After Victor's death, Margaret said she felt strangely calm. She realized that everything she had built could collapse if Elena spoke. Elena knew about the affair. She knew Victor was dead. She had become dangerous simply by being alive. Margaret told investigators she convinced herself that she had no choice. She arranged to meet Elena under the guise of helping her leave the city. She offered money, protection, and a chance to disappear quietly. Elena, already frightened and desperate, agreed. She trusted Margaret without knowing who she really was. What followed was a carefully planned murder, carried out not with rage, but with cold intention. Margaret transported Elena's body and staged the scene to shock the public and mislead investigators. She wanted chaos. She wanted confusion. She wanted the police chasing shadows while she controlled the narrative. The letters were part of that control. Writing to the police gave her power. She enjoyed watching the investigation bend in the direction she chose. Sending Victor's belongings was a way of sealing his role as the villain, ensuring suspicion would never fall on her. When detectives asked why she sent the photograph of Elena alive, Margaret's answer was chilling. She said she wanted people to understand that Elena had trusted the wrong person. Not Victor. Her. As Margaret spoke, the full weight of her actions settled over the room. She was not a woman driven mad by jealousy alone. She was someone who believed she was justified. Someone who believed that protecting her world was worth destroying others. The investigation revealed just how carefully Margaret had hidden in plain sight. Her reputation shielded her. Her silence made her invisible. While the city searched for a monstrous killer, she attended charity events, smiled politely, and mourned publicly for a husband she had already buried. The trial that followed was swift but quiet. Powerful people did not want their names dragged into the scandal. Much of the evidence was sealed. The press was fed a simplified version of events. Official statements were vague. The city was told the case was resolved, but not how. Margaret was convicted behind closed doors and sentenced away from public view. There were no dramatic headlines announcing her guilt. No public confession. Just a quiet removal from society, as if erasing her would erase what she had done. For the public, the mystery of the Black Dahlia remained unsolved. Writers, journalists, and conspiracy theorists continued to argue over the case for decades. Some blamed unknown killers. Others believed the truth was hidden by corruption. Very few suspected the truth was far simpler and far darker. Elena Hart became a symbol rather than a person. Her dreams, her fears, her final days were overshadowed by myth. The real story existed only in sealed files and the memories of those who worked the case. For the detectives involved, the knowledge was heavy. They had seen firsthand how evil could wear a gentle face. How intelligence and patience could be more dangerous than violence. Margaret Lane was not a monster hiding in the shadows. She was a woman who had stood in the light, unnoticed. And that was the most unsettling truth of all. The Black Dahlia murder was not the work of a faceless killer stalking the night. It was the result of obsession, control, and a desperate attempt to preserve a lie. It was a crime hidden in plain sight, committed by someone no one thought to question until it was too late. The case was officially closed on a quiet afternoon, with no cameras outside the courthouse and no crowd demanding answers. A single statement was released, carefully worded and deliberately vague, confirming that the murders connected to the Black Dahlia investigation had been resolved. No names were mentioned, no motives explained. To the public, it felt like an ending without a conclusion, a door shut before anyone could look inside. Inside police headquarters, the atmosphere was very different. Detectives who had lived with the case for months sat in silence, surrounded by files that would soon be sealed and locked away. They knew the truth, and they also knew that the truth would never fully belong to the public. Powerful interests had ensured that. The city of Los Angeles wanted the nightmare to fade, not to be understood. Margaret Lane was removed from the world quietly. There were no headlines announcing her conviction, no dramatic courtroom sketches, no public outrage. Her trial took place behind closed doors, shielded by legal protections and social influence. She entered the system as a respected widow and disappeared as a number in a distant institution. Official records would mention her only briefly, stripped of the story that led her there. To those who had interrogated her, Margaret remained unforgettable. She never screamed. She never begged. Even at sentencing, she showed little emotion. She maintained that she had done what was necessary, that the world would never understand the pressure she faced. In her mind, Elena Hart was a problem that had needed solving, and Victor Lane was a weakness that had ruined everything. Elena, meanwhile, became something else entirely. In death, she achieved the attention she had always chased in life. Her image appeared in newspapers, magazines, and books. Artists painted her. Writers rewrote her story. Over time, Elena Hart faded behind the name everyone remembered. The Black Dahlia. People argued endlessly about who she really was. Some portrayed her as an innocent victim destroyed by a cruel city. Others painted her as a mysterious woman living dangerously. The truth, as always, was quieter and more human. She was a young woman with dreams too big for the world she lived in, caught between hope and fear, trusting the wrong people because she wanted to believe in kindness. Those who had known her personally struggled with guilt. Friends replayed conversations in their minds, wondering what they had missed. Clara, the friend from the diner, never forgave herself for not pressing Elena harder when she sensed something was wrong. For years, she kept Elena's last letter folded in a drawer, reading it whenever the guilt became too heavy. It contained nothing dramatic, only ordinary words about auditions and plans. That ordinariness haunted her the most. The police officers closest to the case carried their own burden. They had solved the mystery, but justice felt incomplete. Elena's name would always be linked to horror, while the person responsible faded into obscurity. The imbalance gnawed at them. They understood that sometimes the system did not exist to reveal the truth, only to contain it. As years passed, the Black Dahlia case took on a life of its own. Rumors multiplied. Conspiracy theories flourished. Some claimed the killer was never caught. Others insisted the police had covered up the involvement of powerful men. Each new book and documentary added layers of fiction on top of an already distorted story. Ironically, these false theories were not entirely wrong. The truth had been hidden, just not in the way people imagined. Hollywood, the city that had drawn Elena in, embraced the legend eagerly. Filmmakers borrowed pieces of her story, reshaping them into thrillers and noir dramas. Each version moved further away from the real woman. The Black Dahlia became an idea rather than a person, a symbol of lost innocence and dark ambition. And yet, fragments of the real story survived. In police archives, sealed files told a different tale. They spoke of manipulation instead of madness, of control instead of chaos. They documented how a woman of intelligence and privilege used society's blind spots to commit terrible acts. They showed how easily people trusted appearances and how dangerous that trust could be. One detective, nearing retirement, often thought about Margaret Lane. He remembered her calm voice, her steady gaze, the certainty with which she justified her actions. What unsettled her most was not what she had done, but how reasonable she believed it was. She did not see herself as evil. She saw herself as a protector of order. That realization stayed with him long after he left the force. Elena Hart never got the ending she deserved. Her dreams ended in silence, her voice replaced by speculation. But in rare moments, when the noise of theories quieted, her humanity still safest. In photographs taken before the tragedy, she looked hopeful, alive, unaware of how close the darkness was. Those images were reminders that behind every legend was a life interrupted. The city moved on, as cities always do. New scandals replaced old ones. New dreams arrived by the busload. But the Black Dahlia story never truly disappeared. It lingered in the background of Los Angeles, a cautionary tale whispered from generation to generation. It warned of ambition without protection, of secrets left unspoken, of how power can distort justice and bury truth. Most of all, it warned that monsters are not always obvious. Sometimes they are polite, respected, and invisible. Sometimes they do not chase you through dark streets but invite you into quiet rooms with promises of help. The Black Dahlia murder became famous because it was brutal and mysterious. But its true horror lay deeper. It revealed how easily a human life could be erased, rewritten, and forgotten when it threatened the comfort of others. Elena Hart wanted to be remembered for her talent. Instead, she was remembered for her death. Yet within the shadows of myth and speculation, her story still speaks to those willing to listen. It says that the truth is not always loud. Sometimes it is locked away, sealed in files, carried silently by those who know it. And sometimes, justice is not about public answers, but about understanding what was lost. The legend of the Black Dahlia continues to fascinate the world. But beyond the legend lies a simple, devastating truth. A young woman trusted the wrong people. A powerful lie was protected. And a city chose mystery over honesty. That is the real ending of the Black Dahlia murder.